What is up? Welcome to the double bonus here in the Northwest Bank Studios. I'm joined by Jackson Pence. I am Jake Brend. Pence, my man, what a game at Allen Fieldhouse. My gosh, we're here on Big Monday. We're going to break it all down. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. That was an awesome game. I tweeted nothing like Big 12 basketball, especially when you have two great teams like that. I just can't get enough of Big 12 basketball. And when you have number one team in the country who's really, really good, and you have a Kansas team without Darryn Peterson go in there and play really, really hard, it was a fun game.
Man, that game was so up and down, and it all starts with what happened leading up to the game. You find out about 30 minutes before that there's some weird stuff going on with Darryn Peterson. Is he going to play? Is he not? He's not warming up. Then you come to find out he's dealing with some flu-like symptoms. To me, this is a bit of a boy who cries wolf situation where he very well might have the flu. He very well might be really sick. But at the same time, why do we have any reason to believe that that's the case? Why do we have any reason to believe that he's just, I don't know, got someone in his ear, got his camp? Like that's what happens when it's what happens when you have so many weird things happen over the course of the year. People expect the worst, and the story of the night ends up being that Peterson or not, Kansas knocks off Arizona for the first time of any team all year.
And it was one of those games where it's like you look at the box score and one of Kansas's best players, Trey White, doesn't really do a whole lot. And when you have no Peterson on the floor, who's, in my opinion, the best player in college basketball, skill-wise, he's going to be the number one pick. It's almost a formality at this point. But you look at Flory Badunga tonight, 23 points. Like if you're starting center who's doing that, who really only can get to the free throw line or score around the basket, scoring 23 points on an Arizona front line that's really good, probably one of the best in college basketball, you're going to win a lot of games. And you talk about Melvin Council, and I'm sure we'll get into it here in a little bit, but he was awesome tonight. Kind of flying under the radar in terms of, I think he's playing at an all Big 12 level right now. A lot of people think he plays funky, but the guy's a winner. He goes, everything he does, he drives that Kansas team to winning, him and Flory Badunga both. So they all play really hard, and that's one of the things I've kind of caught myself cheering for Kansas these last couple of years. It's, pre-NIL, it was almost like, well, Kansas is so much better than everybody else. It was kind of like, it felt really good to beat them, and now it's kind of leveled out with the whole NIL thing. But I always catch myself cheering for these Kansas teams because I just love Bill Self so much. He's grown on me as I've gotten older. He's such a fun coach, and man, you could tell he was really happy after the game, fist pumping the crowd. So I mean, good for Kansas, man. They really struggled, and when Kansas is good, the league is really, really good.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's better for the league. It's another team that can win a national championship, and we'll get into that question because I think there's no doubt Kansas has the ability to win a national championship. I still hesitate with that because how are we going to be so sure that Darryn Peterson can play 6 games in a row? How are we sure that he can play 4 games in a row to make a Final Four? Those are questions for down the road, but what I've seen from this Kansas team is a Kansas team that woke up after West Virginia. And I probably should have waited a week to call him out because I would have never called him out. Whatever happened in Morgantown, whatever happened in that 3-game start to Big 12 play, they figured out how to play hard. And this is, I know all the pedestrian talk, and I enjoy it. It's good banter. But I want to go back to the preseason where there were a lot of people low on Kansas. And I was bullish on them because I thought that they took a really smart route where they went and got these role players. They didn't adopt the same strategy as they had in year prior, where they went out and spent a bunch of money on A.J. Storr and Rylan Harris, or is that
Griffin.
right? Rylan Griffin. DeJuan Harris. They didn't go out and spend just the most money on the biggest names and try to throw it all together. That's what their problem was. And this year, I thought that they went and got a bunch of role players who were going to be able to play around the number one pick in the NBA draft and probably the best defensive center in America. And for some reason it just didn't come together the first 2 months, and it is clicking on all cylinders right now to the point where you can lose Peterson and still go beat the best team in America. Granted, it's in the best building in America as well, which is no doubt in my mind, whatever value Vegas puts on Allen Fieldhouse, I think on a night like this, it's spiked even more. If Vegas is saying Allen is worth 5 points, it's got to be worth at least 8 on a night like tonight. That place was nuts, and it played a massive role in them winning the game. And Cyclone Alley, take some notes, please. You can match that, I promise.
Yeah. You go back to the roster building that Bill Self's done. You bring in a guy like Melvin Council, who started his career at Wagner, played in the NCAA tournament the first 4 game in Dayton. The guy is a junkyard dog. He just knows how to win. He went to St. Bonaventure. There's been a lot of good players, especially Iowa State's gotten a lot of good players from St. Bonaventure, so that's a really good program that knows how to develop winning players. And then you got 2 guys that came back from last year's team, and Jamari McDowell and Elmarco Jackson, who are both really, really good for Kansas tonight.
Great role players.
It just shows how much, if you can stay in the system, especially when you have Bill Self, who's one of the best coaches in college basketball history, he can develop guys too. It's not just the Darryn Petersons or the Flory Badungas who get the headlines. I mean, McDowell kept him right in the game in the first half with his shot making, and then Marco Jackson had a huge bounce pass to Tiller for a slam dunk. That was one of the loudest moments I've ever heard on TV. But they have some really, really good players, and that's why we're going to talk about the Final Four and national championship. I think Kansas is really good, and I think they can get to a Final Four, but I really think it depends on Peterson because he just changes the way that Kansas team's ceiling looks. Whether he's, if he's 100%, then I think they're national championship good just because he can make every shot on the floor.
Well, let's talk Peterson in a couple minutes. I want to talk about what this means for Iowa State. At the end of the day, we are Cyclone fanatic, and we're always trying to root this back to how it affects Iowa State. This is the double bonus here in the Northwest Bank Studios, a YouTube exclusive show. If this is the first time you're joining us, no, you won't be able to find this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. This is a type of show that we're trying to build more of this at Cyclone Fanatic as the future shifts more and more to YouTube. We know how many of you are watching our podcasts. We don't even call them podcasts anymore. Watching our broadcasts. And we're just trying to give a little incentive to those loyal YouTube subscribers. So if you are tuning in and not a subscriber, be sure to hit that button. Be sure to hit the like so you can continue and get more stuff in your feed. This is a massive game for Iowa State, and I'd argue every aspect, because there's the obvious. Arizona's got a loss now. It's not likely, but there's still a world where Iowa State can be in the mix for the Big 12 regular season championship. The Wildcats still have to go to Houston. That's arguably tougher, at least as tough as playing Kansas, especially without Darryn Peterson. So they're going to have their work cut out for them to avoid a second loss. And Iowa State they've got their stretch coming up. And as Christopher says in the comments, just beat TCU. You're right. But the point is, you're in these conversations to try and be a 1 seed, to try and be a 2 seed, to try and win a Big 12 regular season championship. And this win tonight frees up just a little bit of that and gives you a little hope coming into this final stretch of the season.
You mentioned Arizona's schedule. Iowa State's got one very similar, but I'm not really too worried about the conference regular season title race, because we've talked about it numerous times on our network. That means a lot to the fans, but if Iowa State's going to get a 1 seed, they're going to be right there for the regular season title, and right. I'm looking for a 1 seed.
It all goes hand in hand.
It all goes hand in hand. You're right. I'm looking for the 1 seed, but that's huge. And we talked about it before we went live here. We were worried about Kansas coming off a loss coming into Hilton on Saturday and how motivated they were going to be. Well, now you get a Kansas team that's feeling pretty good about themselves. You get a top 10 matchup in Hilton on Saturday with we're going to assume Darryn Peterson's going to play, but that's a team that's going to be licking their chops, ready to beat Iowa State. But I think Iowa State's going to be ready. They got shown the business when they went down to Fog earlier last month. So Big game for Iowa State on Saturday, but like Christopher said, beat TCU tomorrow.
Yeah, no doubt. That's the thing about us. The players, TJ Altenberger, Kyle Green, Nate Schmidt, Micah Byers, those guys are focused on TCU tomorrow. We don't have to do that. We're here to talk about the big picture. We're here to talk about the ins and outs of every single day. We've got the privilege where us talking about a game on Saturday or a game in March against Arizona, we can do that and it doesn't affect the team. So keep in mind, we understand the sentiment to, focus on TCU. The team, it's a tricky spot for them because I'm sure they were up watching this game tonight. I'm sure they'll watch those highlights tomorrow. And it is Kansas coming to town Saturday. It's Houston coming to town Monday. You're going to an arena that's typically not very full against a team that on paper is not great, but we know that TCU's frisky, and that is certainly a trap spot for Iowa State. But you throw this game in there, and I agree with you that it couldn't set up much better for Iowa State on Saturday. When you factor in that, Kansas has won 8 games in a row now. It's really hard to rattle off 9 straight wins in this league. Kansas, their last road game was a really impressive win at Texas Tech. No Christian Anderson, but they haven't exactly been spectacular on the road outside of that this season. Yeah, they blew out K-State. That game was close late. They were in a grinder with Colorado late in the game. They lost to West Virginia. They lost to Central Florida. So this is a Kansas team that is a little different on the road than at home, and how can you not be when you're playing in a building like that? So all of those factors combined, KU's not going to be the most desperate team on Saturday. I would imagine, at least I would hope, they're not going to be the most desperate team on Saturday, and hopefully that sets up well for Iowa State.
I think Iowa State's going to be really motivated because they want to get that win back from Kansas, and they're competing for seed lines too, and destinations for the NCAA tournament too. So there's a lot on the line for Saturday, and you look ahead to Monday too. That Houston game is huge as well. So Iowa State's going to have a chance to get 2 top 10 wins for their resume, which if they can get 2, that helps set up the final 7 or 6 or 7. That's going to get clipped.
Come on, Pence.
Yeah, that's going to get clipped.
Last week, your freaking camera cuts out.
Yeah.
We lose you for the entire show. I'm left on an island, and I do the show for 20 minutes. That's strike 1.
Yeah.
This week you come in here with some childish humor.
Yeah.
That's strike 2. Just kidding, Pence. We're glad you're here. This has been a fun show to bring to our subscribers a little bit. But what point were you making? I totally cut you off.
But you set it up as you look at how many games can you win or lose. That's last 7 games of the season, and if you can get those first 2 before you head over to BYU on that Saturday, that's a huge step in the right direction, especially when you want to be playing for a 1 seed here in March.
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors that you can outline because, Michigan, they've lost at home to Wisconsin. They were 18-point favorites. Who thought they were going to lose that game? Arizona, as good as they've been this year, they've been in a couple close games down the stretch that you didn't expect them to be. So we can lay out all of these scenarios and lay out if this team wins, if this team wins. At the end of the day, you don't know, and you do have to win the games that are in front of you. But if you pull up KenPom and you look at Iowa State's next 6 games, favored against TCU, favored against Kansas, favored against Houston, favored against BYU, favored against Utah, favored against Texas Tech. Now, the odds, despite being favored in all of those games, aren't going to say you're going to win all of those games. If you multiply 60% times 60% times 60%, you're not going to get a 100% chance you're going to win all those games. It's simple math. But if Iowa State can win all the games they're favored in, and Houston beats Arizona at their place, that game in Tucson very well could be a pseudo Big 12 regular season championship game. And that, it doesn't have to be for that game to mean a bunch, but to even have that light at the end of the tunnel to say that could be as big of a game as possible, I think that's almost as big of an impact to come out of tonight as anything.
Yeah, Kansas opens the door pretty much for those top four teams still in the Big 12. And you have the Arizonas, you have the Houstons, but Kansas is right there too. They've only lost twice, right there with Iowa State. But how cool would that be if Iowa State takes care of business and they're going to Tucson for a chance to win a Big 12 regular season title in the McHale Center, which is obviously one of the better venues you can play in college basketball? How awesome was that? You're going to be there. I know C-Dub's going to be there. That would be super cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the standings and say that Texas Tech is still on that they still got a chance, but at 7-3, it's really hard to envision Arizona losing 2 more games, but it's possible. So that loss tonight, it certainly opens the door for Houston because like we keep having this conversation about Arizona. We have this conversation about Iowa State. We have this conversation about Kansas. Houston is going to smoke Utah tomorrow night. I don't care that game's in Salt Lake City. They're going to kill them. And then they're going to kill Kansas State at home on Saturday. And you'd be a fool to expect Iowa State to beat Houston on Monday night in Hilton Coliseum. I don't care how good of an atmosphere Hilton is. It's going to be rocking. I don't care how good Iowa State is. It's Kelvin Sampson, and he's lost 5 games in the Big 12 since they joined the league 3 years ago. So they are just as much in this race as anybody at this point, and I do not want to be victims to sleeping on Houston because they are so legit, and that game on Monday is about as scary of a game at Hilton Coliseum in years.
I believe that Kelvin Sampson, since Houston's joined the Big 12, has won at every place except for Hilton.
0-1.
0-1. He's only played there one time, and Iowa State beat him. That was the Momchilovich corner turnaround shot that won on the game. But Chad's in here. If Chad Settles is in here, if every person in your section, Hilton, isn't basically Ric Flair for 40 minutes on Saturday, you got to do something about it. That's got to be that's got to be what everyone's goal is on Saturday, especially for the rest of the season too. The Daily Clone, you've been talking about Taman Lipsey. How cool would it be for those last 4 games of the season for him to just experience the best 4 games of Hilton in his entire career? That'd be super cool to send him out, one of the greatest Cyclones of all time. Just send him out on the right way. And there's no better than those 4 huge games coming up in Hilton.
I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but this is mostly a college football take for me, but this certainly carries over into college basketball where my famous kind of, not clickbait, but my attention-getting take is that I don't care about the national championship in football. I care about weeks 1 through 12, what those mean, the traditions, and I would say I hold that same opinion to a much lesser extent in college basketball. College basketball, in my eyes, has 2 different seasons. You've got the regular season, and you've got March Madness, where I still think it's completely it's unfair to completely judge a team based off of March performance. The March performance will always play a factor in the legacy, and it should hold the most weight between the two, but the regular season still matters. And to your point, this final 4-game stretch at Hilton Coliseum is probably the biggest of my lifetime, which means it's the biggest of Taman Lipsey's lifetime, and it's Taman Lipsey's last 4 games in an Iowa State uniform in that building. This place better be rocking. If I have to come on here and even slightly complain about the atmosphere in these final 4 games, I will be upset. You thought I was upset on 2 guys this morning. I'll make that look like a picnic if I've got to complain about the atmosphere, and I don't think I'll have to. Iowa State fans are so smart. The students do get up for the right games. There should be no question about the atmosphere on Saturday, and it's going to be electric at Hilton Coliseum the next month.
Yeah, if you have to beg people to come to Kansas game at home, Houston on a big Monday, top 5 Houston, Texas Tech who's in the top 15. Like if you have to beg people to come to these type of games, and I don't know what we're doing as a fan base. I mean, those are 3 of the biggest games you're going to see in Hilton in any season. You don't always get those games every year, and to have them, especially when you're 21-2, the best start in school history, that doesn't happen every year. So and Iowa State has a great fan base, one of the best in the whole country, and I truly believe that. So show up on Saturday, show up on Monday, show up because those guys need it. And when you play really good teams, that sixth man, like Bill Self mentioned, Fog Allen tonight, that plays a huge deal in winning basketball games down the stretch.
Yeah, no doubt. And just right now, automatically Saturday's a top 10 matchup at Hilton Coliseum. You can count on two hands the amount of times that's happened in the history of Iowa State basketball. If you take care of business on Saturday, it's a top 5 matchup. I guess you got to take care of business against TCU as well. And if you take care of business against Kansas, it'll be a top 5 matchup at Hilton on Monday. I'd have to do the research. I don't know if that's ever happened. So it's going to be a great week, and it's going to be, I'm not going to sleep. I don't even know if I'm going to need Red Bull. I think I'm just going to wake up with Red Bull already injected into my veins, the way that I'm going to be fired up about this week of Iowa State hoops.
Man, I think the students will be camping out. I think it's going to be that big of a stretch at Hilton when you've got Kansas on a Saturday, then you've got a quick turnaround on Monday. I think it's going to be the two-game – I think I'm going to call it now. It's going to be the best two-game stretch in Hilton history coming up, especially with the crowd. Hopefully they can pull out 2 Ws.
It'll be up there with I believe it was I think it was 2000 or 2001 where they closed the year at Hilton with top 10 or top 15 matchups with Texas and Oklahoma State.
Yep.
And they closed out and clinched the Big 12 regular season championship in those games. And that I've heard from people that were there and from like the Godfather John Walters, who was, of course, covering those games, how electric Hilton was. I expect that this weekend. I can't wait to be in the building. I trust Chad Settle in his section. I believe he sits in the section right across from the Iowa State bench. Does he sit in your section, Pence?
I don't know, actually.
I could be wrong.
If you know Chad Settle, then you know he's a legit fan. He knows how to get everybody riled up.
He's about as good as they come.
Yeah, he is.
We've got so many great fanatics that make what we do like a living. If people didn't care, if people didn't watch, if people didn't engage, as much as we sometimes come on guys, stop complaining. It's all in good fun, and we couldn't do it without the great fanatics that support every show. Like the double bonus might not be for you, but if you're a Williams and Bloom guy, we appreciate that. If you're a Daily Clone guy, we appreciate all that. So thanks to everyone. I'm through the moon for this weekend. The TCU game is a little spooky. Just the spot. There's so many psychological factors at play. Like we already went over it a little bit, but these players know who's coming to town Saturday. These players know how they just celebrated. Kansas just celebrated like they won the Super Bowl, and I fully expect them to. Like that was an incredible win. Down your best player an hour before the game. You're down double digits against Arizona in the second half, and you come back and find a way to win. Like those players and those fans should be through the roof. But I'm going to guarantee that Iowa State's players see that too and say we're not going to let them walk out of Hilton Coliseum feeling that way.
Yeah, and Iowa State, again, I've said this a couple times tonight, they remember what happened down there. They got punked, and that was at a time where Iowa State was kind of flirting with danger, the Oklahoma State-West Virginia game. They weren't playing their best basketball, and then they turn around and lose 2 straight. And since that Cincinnati loss, they've been playing as good as anyone in the country. You've got Milan Momcilovic shooting at one of the best shooting streaks in history of college basketball. You've got Joshua Jefferson, who's a bona fide first-team All-American. Then you throw in the All-American Taman Lipsey. Like this team is ready for the stretch, and I'm excited to see him play because it's been a while since they played some really, really tough competition. And it starts on Saturday, but there is a look-ahead factor, especially when you've got TCU tomorrow night, who's been wildly inconsistent. They have some really good wins and then some head-scratching losses.
They're bizarre.
Yeah, that's just some head-scratching losses. And, I think Iowa State's going to go out and win by double digits. But, again, it's on the road. The Big 12, it's hard to win on the road. And you just never know in these kind of games. It'll be empty, and it'll be full. I expect TCU to have a decent crowd tomorrow night with a top 5 team coming in.
Yeah, and they're going to be up for it.
Mm-hmm.
just like any team's going to be up when a top 5 team comes to town. But what have we seen with Iowa State this year? Like, I thought Kansas State was up for that game. We were both in the building. Oklahoma State, I'm sure, was up for that game down in Stillwater. When you're the better team, when you're the more physical, when you're the more dominant team, you can take them out of the game. And that's got to be Iowa State's mindset. That's got to be their challenge, to take them out by the under 16 mark of the first half. And they're more than capable. We'll see if they can get it done.
If they do what they did at Kansas State, then they're going to be running away with 20-point victory because they just, from start to tip, they just dominated that game, and Kansas State quit in the first 5 minutes of that game.
Pence will be joining me pre- and post-game show Tuesday night in the Northwest Bank Studios. We'll have the pregame show at 7:30. We'll have the post-game show following the game. That'll be a late one, right around 10. We'll put out a tweet. I don't know how we're going to handle the women's post-game show yet, because they also played 8 o'clock, so I don't know if Pence and I will go, and then if we'll toss it to Leah and Chelsea, or how we'll handle that, but we'll be sure to fill you in on all that. I got one thing to run by you, Pence. Doesn't it feel like we're due for a signature, memorable individual performance? Like, for as many big wins as there's been in the TJ Altenberger era, how many games are there where you can look back and be like, oh, I remember that player X 42-point game? Like, you've got the Brockington game against West Virginia that comes to mind. But like, I feel like in this stretch, home or away, that we're due for a Momcilovic like 40-point game that is talked about in 50 years the way that we talk about LaFesta Rhodes against Iowa. That's just, I'm calling my shot now. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm calling my shot with a Momcilovic 40-point game in the works in this final stretch of the regular season.
The only one I can think of is the Tyrese Hunter against LSU. Like, that was one of the games where I can sit there and, I remember that. That was one of the best games he's played in his whole career. But you're right. I mean, even if it's Joshua Jefferson, multiple triple-doubles this year. I mean, he's playing like an All-American. It wouldn't shock me if he went out and scored 35, or, last year playing UCF, he scored over 40 points. So, I mean, Iowa State's due, whether it's Lipsy can heat up, but I think it would probably come from Momcilovic or Joshua Jefferson.
Yeah, a Jefferson triple-double this year is the closest thing we've seen, but those came against that was West Virginia and Central Florida. If he was able to do that against Kansas or against Houston, you're right. That would go up there. Jacob Allen points out Caleb Grill against North Carolina. That's another good one. So maybe we're just waiting on one at Hilton. Yeah. Because, like, I always think the Melvin Ejim 48-point game. The Kurt Jones 22 points in 5 minutes, that's up there. It's certainly remembered more if that's in a win, even though that'll definitely be something that guys like you and me look back on in 25 years and like, remember that time Kurt Jones scored 22 points in 5 minutes?
And Keyshawn had no idea.
Yeah. But yeah, that's just my little theory that I'm running by you.
Yeah, I think they're due, and I really do think Iowa State can win these next 3 games. And then you go to BYU. I know you're going to be there. That's going to be another huge game, and if they can get that one, then it's on. Then you're playing for the 1 seed. Then you've got everything to play in front of you. But they just can't let one loss. If they drop one of these next 3, you just can't let one loss turn into 2, because that's how you start spiraling towards the end of the season.
If there is an aspect about Saturday that worries me, it's Darryn Peterson. He'll be on a week's rest, and we know how important that's been for him this year. He's still only finished, I believe it's only 2 games.
Yeah.
He's played 2 games where he hasn't checked himself out at some point in the second half. So we'll see. There's something weird going on. There's no way of knowing what it is. We probably will never know the full story. Is this someone in his ear trying to protect his draft stock? Was he truly really sick tonight and made the best decision for the team? We don't know. But if he's sick on Monday, I'd expect him to be healthy and good to go Saturday in Hilton Coliseum. And regardless of how good the crowd is, regardless of how good Iowa State is, there's some times where the number 1 pick in the NBA draft is going to be good enough. And that's where Iowa State's going to have to be ready, and they're going to have to make it a very long 40 minutes for Peterson and make him not want to finish the game.
Hey, that's why we got the torture chamber, man. That's why we got Kylian Torre. Honestly, he did a really good job on Peterson the first game, and the supporting cast around him had a really good game. Trey White had 5 or 6 threes. So, Iowa State's going to have to continue the style of defense that they played the last 5 games, because it's totally flipped since those 2 games skid against Kansas and Cincinnati. They're going to have to force Kansas turnovers, because that'll be the key. We always talk about what are the key stats for Iowa State's points off turnovers, and then offensive rebound, second chance points. So if Iowa State can force over 10 turnovers, they've got a shot to win that game on Saturday.
Well, we'll see you 7:30 Tuesday night here in the Northwest Bank Studios. Thanks to all of you who joined us. We won't have a double bonus after Big Monday next week. We'll find time to do it next week. I guess you'll probably be at Hilton on Monday as well, right, Pence?
I will be at Hilton, yeah.
So you'll be at Hilton. I'll be tied up in our game day duties, but we'll find a time next week to do the double bonus, and we'll for sure be back the following Monday, which would be, I'm blanking on which game that is, but I know there's a Big 12 Big Monday game that night, and we'll be sure to break it down. So for Jackson Pence, for Jake Brend, this has been the double bonus here in the Northwest Bank Studios. Thanks for checking us out. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to hit that like button, and we'll be back with Cyclone Fanatic pregame, 7:30 Tuesday night ahead of the Cyclones at TCU.